Hello, it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you to this session and our keynote from Professor Arnon Levy. He'll be talking to us about the topic of dynamic positive coaching psychology. Just as a way of introduction, I've known Arnon, we were just reminding each other, for over 15 years, and initially due to his significant contribution in the field of coaching psychology. His background is as a clinical psychologist and a coaching psychologist. He's an author, and of course, he's been very active in the field of coaching psychology in Israel and other initiatives around that. So with that, I'd like to pass you over to Arnon so he can take us through his keynote. Thank you very much, Arnon. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Sylvian. Thank you. Okay. So I'm going to talk today, I'll just give you the headlines. In the spirit of the conference theme, I would like to discuss the characteristics, similarities, and differences between coaching psychology, and positive psychology and their relations to neuroscience. I just move a little bit this, okay. With your permission, I'll skip on the short introduction because time limit. And I'll start directly with the lecture. So, life coaching and positive psychology were born like two sisters during the same decade and with a similar agenda and career. It is common to see the founding of Coach University by Thomas Leonard in 1990 as the launching of the coaching era. The launching of positive psychology is considered to be in 1998 with the announcement made by Martin Seligman of positive psychology as the main psychological field he wanted to promote as APA president. Both are groundbreaking, unprecedented, in very short time. However, both were also markedly criticized by professionals and by the large public. And I'm talking now about life coaching and not coaching psychology that I later treat later. Notwithstanding the assumed affiliation, positive psychology always saw itself as the favorite sister that honored the family. It assumed privilege was due to its being part of the academic community, while coaching was made of successful collage composed of different non-academic domains. In a one-page article appeared in Australian Psychologist, December 2007, Seligman offered the coaching community a scientific backbone from positive psychology and supplying meaningful training and accreditation process in coaching. Wherever we look at the story of positive psychology, we find it impressive and extraordinary. Its development has been accompanied by huge research budgets and by bringing the message of psychology to a very broad public. As Seligman put it, before positive psychology era, when he used to take a flight and the passenger next to him would ask him, what was his profession? He would answer psychologist. The passenger would move away. Today, when a passenger in flight asks him and he says psychologist, the passenger immediately comes closer. So what's the fly in the ointment? Is there a problem in the story of positive psychology? Let us start with the virulent, sometimes passionate criticism against positive psychology among colleagues and sometimes the public. While writing this lecture, I Googled criticism of positive psychology and got 95,600,000 items. When I tried different wording like criticism against positive psychology or critic of positive psychology, I received a similar score. This is not the place for a comprehensive review of positive psychology critic. Let me just put the headlines. So methodologically, the critic was that lack of validity of most studies, disregard of human complexity and behavior, overemphasis on negligible results, in accordance with the interest of positive psychology. In terms of cultural reference, positive psychology refers mainly to the perception of happiness in the white person in Western culture and ignores the concept of happiness in other cultures. It is ethnocentric and full of value judgments. For example, Sonia Lyubomirsky, one of the thought leaders of positive psychology, who was born in Russia, says that in her native country, suffering is more valued than the good virtues described by positive psychology because it is considered a factor promoting resilience and mental immunity. Let me summarize the critique. Positive psychology promotes the topic of positive thinking, creates a science of happyiology, denies deep, non-positive human emotion, closer to theology and philosophy in its value approach, close to humanistic psychology, but less competent and mature. The five thought leaders of positive psychology, known as the Five, Martin Seligman, Barbara Fredrickson, Christopher Peterson, Sonia Lyubomirsky, and Ed Diner, are conscious of the abundant criticism and discussed it during the Fourth World Congress of Positive Psychology in 2015. Although one may say that some of the critics are exaggerated, probably in response to the criticism, Seligman started talking about positive psychology in terms of growth and meaning, like in humanistic psychology. He introduced in his 2011 book, Flourishing, the PERMA model, which is composed of positive emotion, engagement and flow, positive relationship, meaning, accomplishment, and achievement. So positive psychology became more adapted to the study of intricacies of human behavior, but by doing so became less positive and more existential, because being centered on meaningfulness. No wonder Sonia Lyubomirsky said in an interview that we do not need anymore the title positive psychology. This reminds me of my psychology BA course of behaviorism when it was found out that the model SR was not capable of explaining many observations of human behavior. As a result, the model has been modified to explain more complex behavior through adding stimulus organism response by Robert Woodworth or stimulus expectancy response. This modification made the behaviorism a different model, more suitable to describe complexity of human behavior, but much less valued as a model that predicts future behavior. In the same way, the newer models of positive psychology, like the second wave of positive psychology, headed by Paul Wong, put it closer to humanistic psychology and even what seemed to be contrary to the message of positive psychology to existential psychology. So what do we have so far? There's no doubt that we cannot deny the great credit from positive psychology for getting down the ivory tower, spreading a positive message of psychology to the general public. Like humanistic psychology in the 60s, positive psychology had an important role to play in our time to go beyond the medical model in psychology and to study the factors of human wellness. The argument I want to promote here is more fundamental. Positive psychology vision is to create a better humanity. Seligman's ambitious goal is to have 50% of us thriving by the year 2051. However, today, the first third of the 21st century, it does not seem that the world is progressing in this direction. We see religious and national fanaticism, egocentric and autodestructive behavior of peoples and leaders that become increasingly common. Moreover, many psychologists would say that a considerable part of the research result in positive psychology is common knowledge that receives scientific validation. Most educated people know that gratitude and positive thinking, investing in social relationship, coping with stress, living in the present, commitment to goals, nurturing the body and mind are good for us. We know it from research in other fields of psychology, from very vast literature of self-help books and workshops, from Buddhist psychology, and some New Age common wisdom. This knowledge does not change human behavior. Millions of women know what are the ways to lose weight and still struggle the daily results that appear on the scale. Millions of people know the destructive effect of smoking and drug use on their health, but they do not cease doing it. And in the spirit of our time, people know that coronavirus kills, but many people deny it and ignore its effect and do not help themselves to be secure from it. Knowledge is found in what Kahneman termed system 2 or slow thinking, and transforming knowledge into behavior requires fast and spontaneous thinking and action. We mental health practitioners know how difficult it is to change human behavior, our own behavior, and especially the behaviors of others. To understand why positive psychology did not change most people's life, despite its large popularity and its positive message, we need to see how people's behavior change. The behavior patterns of a person derive from three main sources: the evolutionary program installed in our brain by natural selection, the culture in which the person lives, the personal and unique way in which the individual internalizes his experiences throughout his life. Let us begin with the evolutionary program that is instilled in every human being, but we shall see that usually we lose most of its benefit. The study of evolutionary programming of the brain is reinforced by a relatively new scientific field, positive neuroscience, established since the beginning of the century. These studies and the works of Panksepp and Hanson suggest three important command systems in the brain: the survival program, the search-reward program, and the attachment program. The survival program has been designated to secure survival and located mainly in the amygdala. The survival program is designated to intercept dangers. When an individual person or animal experiences a threat, it produces a FFF response, fight, flight, freeze response, operated by cortisol and adrenaline transmitters. A second brain program has been termed by Panksepp as the system of seeking and reward, and is located mainly in the ventral tegmentum and operated mainly by dopamine and serotonin transmitters. The search reward program is also probably developed by natural selection for survival. The search and reward is an inborn instinct that allows the newborn to spot the mother's nipple, which is crucial for his survival. Later on, when the newborn grows up, the seeking reward program activates the adult individual curiousness, expectation, satisfaction, creativity, and joy. When the seeking reward program is blocked for various reasons, the individual may experience frustration, indifference, helplessness, and depression. A third brain program generates attachment. The attachment program is also related to survival. It is the basis to the mother-child bonding relationship, generating caring, empathy, involvement, compassion, and love. The attachment program is located mainly in the anterior cingulate gyrus and is operated by oxytocin and prolactin. Later in life, the attachment becomes the basis to the individual's social and interpersonal relations, to altruism, and to his feeling of belonging to the family and the community. If the implementation of the attachment program becomes blocked, the individual might develop isolation, carelessness, separation distress, indifference, and antisocial behavior. So when we got to this point in the lecture, a number of questions arise. In what way the traits inherent in us through evolution are indeed effective for wellness promotion? If they are effective, then the key to wellness lies within us. Therefore, positive psychology research of wellness is important as basic science, but much less as a vehicle for transforming human behavior. If in optimal situation, the program inherent in us allows us assertiveness, confidence, serenity, happiness, curiosity, creativity, joy, empathy, altruism, and love, what else do we expect from our lives? What then is the cause of the blockage of these features and why these traits are often not accessible to us? Let us inquire into it. When an individual, human or animal, does not experience that the world is a dangerous place, the positive qualities of the brain could be expressed. One can, for example, see the serenity of the lion, in whose world there are very few threats, especially from other lions, compared to the frightened, tense, and alerted look of the rabbit. In the very young, we can find genuine behavior of confidence, joy, excitement, curiosity, expectation. We also find in the young spontaneous and limitless attachment and love because they are naturally installed in the human brain. In a relatively secure world, in safe haven, we tend to experience these traits of serenity, equanimity, joy, attachment, and love. Like in a holding environment, in certain situations of psychotherapy, and at the top of the food chain. So what happens to us during our life journey in which we have lost much of the potential for wellness granted to us by evolution? We are at the top of the food chain, yet we more often experience anxiety and depression than authentic joy, true empathy, compassion, serenity, equanimity, and love. The reason for that is that we do not act solely on the basis of our inborn drives. Throughout our lives, we internalize our experiences and accordingly change the existing neural networks in our brain. It is the process of learning that every person and animal goes through. The learning process involves the culture within which we live, and there's an incongruity in the learning process between the instinctual evolutionary basis for wellness and human cultures. Our instinctual drives are formed to enable survival in the wild. Human culture are symbolic environment, and the hazards we encounter are also symbolic, but they put us in a FFF condition as if they were life-threatening. A boycott at school, critical comments by a parent, or a humiliating remark by the boss, and today also shaming in the social networks, are not life-threatening, but activate the survival programs of FFF as if they were so. The learning process produces neural networks that fixate the learning. This way, in any similar situation, where we feel symbolically threatened, our organism will respond as if it were life-threatening. The blood flows to the muscle for FFF response instead of flowing to the brain where it's most needed to deal with a symbolic threat. This threatening situation blocks the spontaneous expression of joy, curiosity, peace, empathy, and love. So here we come to the third factor in shaping human behavior, and it is a factor of unique personal way in which a person performs the learning process, the internalization of his experiences in life. And this factor is associated with the difference between positive psychology and coaching psychology. What does positive psychology and what does coaching psychology do? Positive psychology researches and generalizes the parameters of wellness. Generalizing wellness is also what self-help books do, but positive psychology does it in a methodology as scientific as possible. People do not change following reading self-help books. They must read and say, aha, or better they'll say, true, I should do it tomorrow. In the next few minutes, they will either forget or move to another subject, or when they get into a situation that they want to change, they will usually act according to the old habits. Positive psychology research produces knowledge that remains at the level of consciousness, but does not modify the rapid activity patterns in the brain. Coaching psychology and psychotherapy, as opposed to positive psychology, work to create relearning. Through coaching, training, reframing, creating suggestion and new insight and emotional experience, we create new learning tailored especially for the client or the group or community, followed by new neural networks in the brain. We cannot change the evolutionary heritage granted to us, nor do we want to. In situations where we are not stressed and not threatened, this heritage engenders us, as we have seen, assertiveness, confidence, peace of mind, expectation and goal achievement, empathy, caring, and love. By integrating coaching and psychotherapy, we are able to deal with the barriers we have created throughout our lives that prevent us from reaching these places of wellness. And all in all, I believe that the key to happiness and wellness lies within us. We just have to coach and to train ourselves to get there. And to end, I wish to share some personal remark about my engagement with this issue. Stephen knows that for the last 15 years, I established and directed a coaching psychology program at Tel Aviv and Bar Ilan University. During this period, I developed a developmental model of coaching that consists of six stages, and in each we use a different technique of coaching and psychotherapy. It's not the place to describe in details this program that was partially inspired by the work of Di Clemente and Prochaska. With your permission, I just mentioned some headlines. The intervention model is composed of preparation phase, creating a secure place using mainly Rogerian techniques, recognition phase, reauthoring the client's life story using mainly narrative psychotherapy, predecision phase, inquiry into the personal vision using Ericksonian metaphors and motivational approach, decision phase, goal setting and decision making, CBT approach, SMART and similar models. Implementation and action phase, using Gestalt and activation approaches, integration and ecological phase, and maintenance of the change. We, the teacher, also supervise the implementation of this model to verify its success in promoting positive change. This is just one example of the possibility of implementing the fruitful integration between coaching and psychotherapy to get to the desired goal. In conclusion, it could be said that despite the important contribution of positive psychology, the creation of a meaningful change is not necessarily in the discovery of additional knowledge. It seems that the key for the desired change lies in all of us, but we as coaching psychologists have the job to tailor the right positive change package for each individual or community. We should deal with the obstacle due to maladaptive learning during our lifetime in order to get to the desired holy grail within us that was granted to us by natural selection. Thank you for your listening.
Thank you very much, Arnon, for such a kind of comprehensive exploration and consideration of those themes and those topics, and bringing all of those different theories together in light of dynamic positive psychology. Kind of a wealth of information there. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
I'm going to invite, if I may now, kind of questions and answers from the floor. I think I have got one.
We have a question.
Sorry, Sheila?
We have a question in the Q&A, Siobhan.
Yes, thanks, Sheila. I'll read this out, Arnon. It's from Andrew. Thank you, Andrew. And the question is, how do you explain positive psychology as knowledge when it's described by Seligman as an applied field that has included a range of positive psychology interventions that generate new behaviours? Hence, aren't positive psychology and coaching psychology fundamentally the same thing? So I think that's the kind of the interesting kind of summary question at the end. Aren't positive psychology and coaching psychology the same thing? What do you think, Arnon?
Yes, I know that coaching psychology is also called sometimes applied positive psychology. And I know, positive psychology is a very wide, let's say, movement approach. It has very talented people, and they are aware of the fact that it doesn't. They try also. I know that there are essays to make it more applied, but I don't think it's enough. I think most of the work of positive psychology is in basic research of wellness, which is also very much criticized because it's very difficult to research, to make research of a complex situation. But what I wanted to say that I don't want to disvalue the research. It's a basic, it's important research. And there are also attempts to make it applied. But I think it's very, when you look at the dimension of positive psychology, the applied is really on the, it's very small in relation to all the research that they are doing, the applied part. And coaching psychology has all the tools to do it with, because it's the meeting place of psychology and psychotherapy and coaching, which are very powerful instruments.
Thank you, Arnon, for that full reply there. Sheila, did you have a question just while we're waiting for anybody else that wants to kind of add something into the list?
Yes, I was really interested, Arnon, to build on what you just said and really ask you, if when we sort of reflect back on positive psychology, where it started, where it is now, and some of the kind of integration you talked about with coaching psychology, where do you see it going? So I suppose, what's your advice to the field of positive psychology as it advances further?
Okay, that's a wonderful question. I was thinking of it, but I didn't want to put it in the lecture because I didn't want to go too far in the field of positive psychology. What I believe I believe that positive psychology will continue to develop, but as I say, it will be less positive and more existential.
Yeah.
Because they get to the complex behavior. You can't think all the time positive thinking and positive behavior, and you have to consider. That's the second wave of positive psychology is very similar to existential psychology.
Yes, that makes sense. Thank you. So yes, absolutely reinforcing what you were talking about, but you know what that means for positive psychologists going forward is really interesting. And I did have one more question, if I may, Siobhan. Is that okay?
Please go ahead, Sheila. Yes.
Thank you. So the other interesting piece for me was thinking about the current context of COVID, and as you mentioned, you know, the fact that people know what to do but sometimes don't do it, and what does it take to create behavior change. Do you have any thoughts on, in the current context, you know, is there anything else that can be done to encourage people to do the right thing from a COVID perspective, given the conditions that you described?
Well, I think, first of all, this depends on the leadership. In Israel, we have a very good example of bad leadership because we have a prime minister that have many troubles and he is doing all his activity is directed by his willingness to avoid legal processes. And so people lost the confidence in the direction that they get. And I think once the leadership is, you have to be very trustful and to be transparent in your considerations, and people will do it because some people are afraid of the COVID-19, and other people will obey because they'll take it as a collective collective duty. And also this is a really opportunity for more altruism and more considering the other, the community, and not only ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Which I suppose that can lead to having more purpose and feeling like you're part of something, you know, bigger than yourself. So it's interesting perspectives. Thank you very much for sharing those.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Shiv. Thank you, Arnon. I've got one question, which might be a bit too specific, Arnon, but when you shared the headlines on your model, your new model, you talked about in stage 6, ecology. You talked about ecological kind of aspects. I wondered if you'd just say a little bit more about actually what you might mean there.
Okay. Since I began to deal with coaching psychology, I saw that in coaching, many coaches, because they have, sometimes they have a superficial education, they just passed a course of coaching and they start doing it mechanically by techniques, by applying techniques. What's your vision? They start at the beginning. And I found that it's very, it's not very practical. So I decided to divide it into stages, where in each stage we use a different psychotherapy form. Of course, we didn't teach the student to know all the psychotherapy technique, because they have to know many techniques, you know, and they can. But we took the main the main principles of each technique. Like, for example, there's nothing better than the Rogerian approach to make a secure place. And the secure place is essential for the student, for the coachee, to open himself and to get to his real way of vision or self-actualization, and not to something superficial, to say, I want to make an independent business or something like this. And then the second phase, you speak about your life story. So you come to know better the coachee, and to make re-authoring of his story. And then you do the pre-decision phase, which is we use the motivational approach and Ericksonian metaphors to get deeper to the unconscious of the person, you know, to his internal world. So he will be able to create something which is really meaningful for him. And once he got it, we do it very practical. We go to a decision to a decision phase when we use like CBT and SMART models, which are very practical and put the things to the point. And then we get to the implementation, which is, I think, the most difficult one, because here you have to deal with all the difficulties to implement all the process that you passed through the coaching session, through the coaching, not session, you know, through the coaching.
Yeah, the program, yeah.
The program, yes, through the coaching program. And then we use some very active techniques like Gestalt and psychodrama. And after that, we look at the ecology. We see when the person passed through certain modification, what does he do to his family, to his relationship with his wife, with his children, and then to fixate and also to his work, because maybe he became more courageous in his work. He become, you know, he comes with requests to his boss, and it makes changes in his life. So we study this part of ecological system, and then we try to fixate it, you know, to make it durable, the change. And sometimes we fix a meeting after 1 month or 2 months, just to make to see how it works. So we made it, the students made it, and it worked very well, you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Arnon. I mean, to begin with, that point that you made about the kind of being person-centered and coachee-centered is right at the kind of the forefront of that. And that point about, you know, it going to action. You know, you explore the evidences and going to action, and this idea of kind of the kind of the scales of the context, or the layers of the context around somebody is again so interesting, particularly in the current climate that we're all experiencing at the moment. Thank you very much, Arnon. I just seen another question kind of come into the Q&A, yeah. And it might be our last question. I think this is from Povilas. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Just being curious about the kind of the evidence base around those 6 stages that you've just talked about in that model, and also it'd be interesting to know how different clients might experience those modalities. and in terms of things like duration, sequence, and other aspects of the program. So I mean, I suspect in the time available we might not be able to cover all these points, but I wonder if you've got kind of any kind of general reflections about, you know, in practice how you might use that approach, and also I mean, I was hearing you talking about the evidence base, the theories that you were drawing on there, but would you like to add any more there, Arnon?
Yes. Actually, the coaching, the duration of the coaching program is also about 15 meetings. So let's say, for example, for the Rogerian approach, we do, each stage is about 2 to 3 sessions. But it's very important to mention that we are not talking about stages. It's like a spiral, because let's say the secure place has to be all the time, but we put the accent, we put the stress on different stages according to the program. But actually, the life story, the secure place, it's all passed through the whole program of the coaching. We just put the stress on different stages to make it flow better, you know. Because what I want to say, because as a clinical psychologist, you know, when you come to a person to start coaching him, and you start demanding him, how do you want to make a change? What do you do? How do you do it? It gets the person get closer into himself, to defend himself, you know. So it's very important to do it really gradually, the process.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much, Arnon. Beverly's just asked, I suppose in our last 30 seconds, where we can learn more about this model. Have you written any articles about it, or anything that we can kind of direct people to?
Actually, well, first part of the lecture was from a new book that I wrote, which is called The Mindful Brain. And it's going to be in English. It's my first book in English. All the other ones were in Hebrew. So it's going to be, I think, quite soon. And also I'm making a program, online program of my teaching. I'm preparing now to do it. So it's possible to do it in English. To join this program. So we'll be in touch. I'll let you know.
Thank you very much, Arnon. And we're 2 times. So I'd just like to again thank everybody for attending the session, and also for those great questions, and Arnon also for your time in kind of walking us through your keynotes. So thank you to everybody. I'm going to close the session now, and I hope to see you at another session during the rest of today. Bye bye for now.